Welcome to the Black Miss Podcast. Welcome to the Black Miss Podcast. Your host, Too Black. This is not a normal podcast. This is why this is only on Patreon. This isn't serious enough to be anywhere else. But this is for extra content. Something I don't think we've had major demands for, but I know some people do support the Patreon, so just giving y'all something. And this might go on BPM depending on how terribly this does or doesn't go. So we'll see. But so this is Black Myths, Black Movies. So we are watching Black movies and we are picking out myths in Black movies as well as discussing the deeper themes that perpetuate myths, even if they're not factually incorrect. Just the fact that movies depict things that just help push BS agendas. So we stereotypes, historical errors, misrepresentations, plot holes, ideological distortions. We still gonna keep it, radical, black radical, and all of that. But we just watching movies. There's difference in the main podcast in the sense that we won't be specifying one myth. So it's not Black Wall Street was self-sustaining, or we still haven't done the episode, but crack babies or one particular myth that we all hover on. There's gonna be different stuff we all pick out from the movie. And now, again, that's myths in this show basically defined as the stories of misrepresentations about Black life that are reflected in the movie, whether that be historical, political, economic, social, etc. This is an opportunity for the co-hosts to be a little more loose, a little more kicked back. So we have a few alcoholics. Actually, I'm the only one that's not an alcoholic on this show. So people will be a bit more inebriated, but editing is still available, thankfully. This will only premiere on Patreon, and like I said, opening this may go on BPM depending on how terribly it's not. Our primary objective is still our main podcast, so we're not about to turn into movie critics. That's not where this is going. We're still on our Polyad and shit. And if this doesn't work, y'all may never hear another episode again.
It's gonna work.
There's also that. So, my co-host wanna chime in on that, and then we can get to the movie we're gonna be talking about.
Y'all got first off, it's gonna work, and
don't worry, it's gonna work.
I want to salute my co-host Cam, Brian, because on cue they had their drinks ready.
Oh God!
You already know. Hey, Jeff Bezos, what's up? Fuck, nigga. I was kidding.
Wow. Only loyal members know that phrase.
Only loyal. Anyway.
I think so often, everyone's always like, how do you guys come up with your episodes? And we constantly tell y'all, we just nerds in real life. And we're just talking about any and everything. And sometimes things come up. And sometimes it's really just Too Black being a super nerd and finding all these random things that we never even thought to talk about. And that's how it come up. But I mean, in this capacity, we literally were just chopping it up after an episode. Got on the topic of Black movies. Oh, it's because stupid ass Love and Basketball was on TV I don't understand why that stupid movie still airs. To which, of course, if you couldn't tell, I hate. And we just started going in on all of the actual myths and inaccuracies that are portrayed. Read us arguing and debating about Black movies throughout history, and that led us here. And so from our ridiculous brains to now the internet, I hope y'all enjoy it.
Yeah, here we go.
Yes.
Nah, Cam was upset about that.
Yeah.
I hate Love and Basketball. That's not today's episode. If this goes decently,
Love and Basketball might be one of the victims.
Yeah,
it will be one of the victims.
Yeah, this will probably get a much more balanced view, unfortunately, than that one will. Because I don't think.
We will smoke that one.
But so today we're doing Barbershop.
A place I haven't been in a while, I guess.
And for one, Black has been to the barbershop. Way to go, Black.
Wow.
That's
what we doing. That's what we doing.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie, I almost choked.
You should finish that. But but nah. Any quick thoughts on Barbershop? Keep this brief because we have a lot to say. Obviously, after because Ryan's gonna read a review or an overview of the film. Any brief thoughts on Barbershop?
Barbershop is definitely a product of its time. It's a 2002 film. You know, it's there's gonna be some problematic things in there. Some old thinking. Wow, 2002. Oh
wow. Yeah. Like, where were you?
20 years ago.
I think it's something to say that you know, while the movie when it came out had a lot of great things in it, it didn't age well. And I think when we know better, we do better. I mean, it probably wasn't that great when it came out, but the adults back then didn't, you know, older folks back then weren't critiquing it the way we are now. And so I think it's important for us to look at things that we view as relics or that we view as classics through a new lens once we know better, in order to really be able to call that shit out for what it is. Because while as Black folks we can watch this shit and laugh and kiki about it, we are not the only ones who watch movies about Black people. And so when they're continuously perpetuating negative stereotypes about us, it just lends a hand to those who view those and take those at face value and think that's really how we are, who we are as a whole. And that doesn't just go for Barbershop, but just Black movies across the spectrum.
Yes, time changes, culture shifts, culture changes. The way we view films will change. At the time when Barbershop dropped, it received positive reviews. But, you know, as time goes by, when you look at it as through a critical lens, especially 2022, we can point out the issues of the film. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
It's wild that it was 20 years ago.
That's crazy.
That is wild. Like, I was like 12 when that movie came out.
I was 12. Yep.
Yeah. So, as Cam said, Barbershop did not age well. Not to say I didn't enjoy the movie, because of course I was 12 when it came out. I was like, but
yeah, when I was rewatching it, there's some nostalgia factor for me as well, where I was
there was a lot of nostalgia for me.
I was like, oh man, I remember when I went to go see this with my family. Or, oh man, I remember, you know, being in a barbershop and this similar situation happened. But Barbershop, as you will find out for our audience out there, can be a very toxic place. Rampant misogyny, toxic masculinity, so on and so forth. But we're going to get into it.
It's not all just those things, but yes.
No, it's not all just those things. It's not limited to those things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much. I never liked it. Obviously, I don't think anybody's surprised about that. So I mean, I didn't always have a critical view of it. I just didn't really. It was not something I was ever going to sit down and
rewatch. Don't like shit.
So
he likes Love Jones, and that's it.
I don't like that either. But
he's the emo nigga of the group.
We trolling. But nah, I never really thought it was really that good, and I don't think I'm kind of jumping the gun, but we'll debate this later. I do not think I don't think the general barbershop is a country club for Black men or whatever that means. So, but you know, in all fairness, like Ryan said, the film is a film of its time. I don't think we should be super critical of it either, because we have to recognize 2002 was a much different time for those who were there, and certain types of jokes were much more okay, and there was no scrutiny. So honestly, for the time it came out, it wasn't that problematic in comparison to other stuff that we'll end up doing later.
Yes.
So like it really wasn't. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't. Again, I don't think it's a good movie. I think it's heavily flawed, but it wasn't like Players Club or something. So without further review,
that was a good analogy.
Yeah,
that was just a good comparison. My fault.
But yeah, so Ryan is gonna give an overview just for the people who didn't watch it, or forgot to watch it, or thought it was too deep to watch. So go ahead, Ryan.
Barbershop is a 2002 film directed by Tim Story, who also directed the 2005 Fantastic Four, right along in the 2019 Shaft. Exactly. The film follows a down on his luck barber by the name of Calvin Palmer, who inherited his father's barbershop after he passed away. Only 2 years into owning the barbershop, and already Calvin has become fed up with the everyday hustle and bustle of owning a business.
So
At the beginning of this film,
he was fed up
he's
because
fed up.
at the beginning we see this nigga with the studio in his basement, most stereotypical shit ever, especially in 2002. He's trying to start a studio. The studio equipment burns or something or blows up.
Blows up.
And then we're supposed to believe that he's just like so dissatisfied. I don't think they established that very well, but all right, go ahead. Just wanted to say
No,
that.
real quick. If you are dissatisfied with running a barbershop and you want to run a studio,
You just like disappointment.
But you know that, to be quite honest,
that's like
is that not nigga shit though? Let's keep it real. Is that nigga shit though?
I mean,
Like,
it's.
niggas really.
I don't know if it. I actually don't know about that one. I think that was even
that's not
excluded.
nigga shit, bro.
Yeah, like I don't.
Claim that one. I'm not gonna claim that one.
No, I don't.
do certain things and then just not.
No, I don't think a nigga is gonna. I don't think a nigga sells his shop to buy a studio. Like I don't think niggas are that. Like that's pretty far, bro. Like,
It's pretty far.
that's too much.
That's a reach.
Yeah, that's not nigga shit. I think that's part of the problem is this like nigga shit is just whatever you. So you just go too far. Yeah, you just make stuff up that even niggas wouldn't do. Like who does that? But anyway, continue.
To let Ryan continue.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the movie, is that far of a reach? Because I've done the studio shit, and you want niggas to come in and out of your crib, this, that, and the third, paying you iffy.
Oh, yeah,
your wife is
for flavor.
Your wife is pregnant, and you want to start that while your wife's pregnant.
Start a studio.
Of all the things to do, something that's okay. You're dumb.
Hey, you know what? Hey, Ryan, please continue. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I love it. You know. So at the beginning of the film, it sets the whole mood, as you all have chimed in. It shows Calvin more interested in get rich quick schemes than actual art of barbering or running a business. The film is set in the South Side of Chicago, where immediately you're introduced to an array of colorful characters whose personalities jump off the screen, but at the same time,
nobody has a Chicago accent, by the way. Continue.
None. Right, exactly. But are somewhat rooted in reality. Yeah, and like my co-hosts have pointed out, none of them have Chicago accents.
Not even close.
Not even close. Which later on we should do a discussion on black movies that are centered, or like the setting is in a certain city, but none of the accents match. We should do something like that. It happens all the time.
Hey, right.
Matter of fact, in the movie Dope, it takes place in California, but then you got ASAP Rocky, who has a thick Harlem accent in the middle of California. Yeah. Like, didn't make any sense. But anyway, all right, so everyone in the neighborhood knows a hustler who can literally get anything from. Everybody knows an old school barber or old school nigga that just speaking how things were back in his time. The convicted felon who was using the barbershop as a way to start a new life. Or everybody knows that one nigga who's educated and has an inflated ego who thinks he's better than everybody else. So we know these characters. But as the film progresses, Calvin ends up making a deal with a shady loan shark to sell his business for him to make extra money. However, since the guy is a shady loan shark, he has plans to turn the barbershop into a strip club with a barbershop theme.
A gentleman club. That's what he says.
A gentleman club. Excuse me. Again, Calvin's constant quest for wealth and status has led him into a bullheaded decision to sell one of his only remaining heirlooms of his father. Devastated by this decision, Calvin ends up seeing the error of his ways and wants to gain his father's shop back. So with the help of law enforcement and being in the right place at the right time, as many films so conveniently do, he was able to get the barbershop back. So, of course...
Wait, hold on. That one we got to speak on.
Yeah.
Because the way he got the barbershop back just didn't make any sense. So, because he sold, again, the studio thing, he sold his barbershop for $20,000 with no contract. He was just like, bro, you gonna keep with the barbershop? Sure. The loan shark, like, sure. And he gives him $20,000. I'm gonna turn into a gentleman's club. And then he tries to chase him down to give him his money back. And he only is lucky because the people who stole the ATM, which I know you're going to discuss, left it in the room.
That's the best part.
And there was a 50 grand, just so happened, this is great writing. There was a 50 grand reward to turn it back in. And he makes it. Made no sense. But go ahead.
You let them know who found this.
Definitely a lot of what's the word I'm looking for?
Suspension of belief.
Not even the suspension of belief. But yeah, this there. But there's the convenient plot point where everything just happens to fall in place. I'm gonna figure it out. Don't worry.
And you work with law enforcement. Because the thing is, he threatened to snitch on who was essentially a gangster. Loan sharks are always gangsters in the hood. That goes hand in hand. So that's the only reason they have the money to do it in the first place. So you're gonna snitch on them, and nothing happens to you. You know? Okay. Yeah. All right. I guess it's not. Yeah. In Chicago, South Side. All right.
Shout out to the South Side.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just not happening.
No.
It's not. Sorry, I was just trying to find that plot device. Deus Ex Machina. That's the plot device. It connects loose ends of the entire plot and then brings them to a resolution. So basically, that whole part that Black just described, the 50, everything coming together, where you get the ATM, the
ATM conveniently,
all of this.
Yeah, all of that. Just the ATM conveniently is in the place of the guy who stole your shop, or who you sold it to, who wants it for 40 grand. It ends up in his shop, and then there's a 50 grand reward on top of that.
So yeah, we might put that.
We're not gonna call it that.
We might put that in the video. Deus Ex Machina.
It was given what? What'd you say, Kim?
I said it was given a setup, but we're not gonna call it that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Some will call it coincidence. Other people will call it a setup.
But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Deus Ex Machina.
All these pieces fell in together, and hey, look, the plot connects now.
Yeah, it's a plot device and found in many films. Of course, Barbershop is not without its flaws because it's a product of its time. E's character, Terry Jones, is an extension of the angry Black woman archetype, which shows her losing her temper on almost every scene that she's in. The toxic masculinity that resorts to objectifying women is still present, but it's still a representative of how a lot of barbershops are, but it's not limited to that, as Black pointed out at the beginning of this review. The subplot of the two criminals stealing in the ATM and carrying out is goofy, but it still drives the overall plot forward, as you see at the end. Of course, somebody would have seen them with the ATM carrying this around all day. But of course, there's something called suspension of disbelief that most films depend on, the viewer to have. I think the biggest takeaway from this film was the idea of treasuring family heirlooms and not selling out for a quick buck. There are many aspects of life that are more valuable than money, but in a capitalist, market-driven society, it's hard to keep track of that. But when we take a step back and understand that most Black businesses that suffer don't make it are not always to the fault of the business owner. They sometimes just can't compete in the market. Also, I wish that most Black millennials who push the idea of Black business and Black dollar would take a look at Barbershop and see how truly difficult it is owning a business. It's not something to be romanticized or glamorized. It's hard work and sacrifice, and sometimes you just don't survive even when you do everything correctly.
First, thank you for that. So there's a lot still to discuss because we didn't really, it was again, that's an overview, so we didn't do a scene by scene, and we don't have time to do that, and it's not a movie that's really worth scene by scene anyway. So like,
like the movie, bro.
Huh?
Just tell us you really didn't like the movie.
Oh, sorry. So we picked we're gonna start with 3 scenes. Because, again, our point here is to identify specific myths within the film, and then the rest of the commentary is just discussing in general and stuff. So there's 3 scenes. There's the one that I think if you were alive back then, or at least present, old enough to remember that time, the Rosa Parks scene actually did catch that pissed people off. But for reasons that I don't even care about, but it pissed people off, that scene. In the same scene, that was when they also said, "Man, fuck Jesse Jackson," which I don't really have a problem with that either. Then there's the there's a scene where they riff about if niggas got reparations, we just spend it on whatever, that kind of like Bill Cosby pound cake kind of vibe or whatever. And then there's the scene where the white barber says he's blacker than the annoying smart black character. What's his name?
Jimmy James.
Jimmy, yes. The white dude was Isaac. I just want to make sure I get these names right. Isaac Rosenberg. So they're implying he's got some kind of Jewish affiliation. He kind of looks like DJ Envy, to be honest with you. If anybody knows.
I was thinking more. I think if you want to get too deep,
he looks like DJ Drama. I thought that was DJ Drama when I watched
DJ Drama.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that works too.
I thought that was DJ Drama when I was like, yo, is that DJ Drama? Nah, that's not that nigga.
If you want to get deep into the hip hop bag, though, have you seen DJ Green Lantern?
Oh, damn. Yeah.
That's deep. See, me and Two Black were hip hop heads.
Yeah.
Just like all them light skinned niggas. I think he's actually white. DJ Green Lantern? I don't know.
Yeah, he is.
Don't quote me on that.
This is the Rosa Parks scene.
The Panthers, you got to give it up to them. You got to give it up to Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, and you got to give it up to Rosa Parks, period. Okay. Because they was deep, and they was on the front line in the 60s.
Okay. Who the hell is Rosa Parks?
Who's Rosa Parks?
She's only the founder of the modern civil rights movement.
Why? What? Because she sat her ass down on the bus?
Come on, Eddie, you know who Rosa Parks is.
Man, she was tired. That's what you do when you're tired. You sit your ass down. I sat down on the bus and I got thrown in jail. Ain't hear from nobody in a whole week.
Laptops, computers, chiller cleaners.
Hey, I done told you 2 or 3 times.
No, Kev, no. You know what? He need to hear this. You sit down. You need to hear this too. Sit down, Rayford. Now, I probably wouldn't say this in front of white folk, but in front of y'all, I'm gonna speak my mind. Rosa Parks ain't do nothing but sit her black ass down. Hold on now, Seinfeld. You might learn something right now. I'm gonna give her just due. I'm gonna give her just due for what she did. Her act led to the movement and everything. But she damn sure ain't special. No, it was a whole lot of black folk sat down on bus and they got thrown in jail, and they did it way before Rosa did. And they did it way before Rosa. Only difference between them and her is that she was secretary at the NAACP, and she know Martin Luther King, and they got a lot of publicity.
That's all not to say what? To me, it sounds like you got a little haterism in your game.
Well, Cam, no, this ain't no hateration or no holleration in this dancery, okay? What I'm saying is that black people need to stop lying.
Say something.
There's 3 things that black people need to tell the truth about.
What?
One, Rodney King should have got his ass beat for driving drunk and being grown in a Hyundai. 2, OJ did it. And 3, Rosa Parks ain't do nothing but sit her black ass down. That's right. I said it.
Hey, I'm gonna back you up on that, cause see, look, he was on the bus back in the day, and he on the bus now.
And not only is what you're saying not true, it's Rosa Parks in that way.
Exactly.
Wait. Hold on here. Is it the barbershop? Is this the barbershop?
Yes, it's
the barbershop. I mean, we can't talk straight in the barbershop. Then where can we talk straight? We can't talk straight nowhere else. You know, this ain't nothing but healthy conversation. That's all
You gotta tell Rosa Parks down.
It ain't nobody exempt in the barbershop. You know that. Ain't nobody exempt. You can talk about whoever and whatever, whenever you want to in the barbershop.
Why you gotta tear Rosa down like this, Eddie? You know you're wrong. Keep on walking. You wrong. You walking by yourself this time, pal. I ain't with you. I'll tell you one thing. You better never let Jesse Jackson hear you talking about that.
Man, fuck Jesse Jackson.
You're a lord.
Jesse, Randy, Tito, Freddie, action. I'll take him on, Jackson. That's right.
All right. Fuck Jesse Jackson still goes. I ain't gonna.
That's probably. There's only 2 things I agree.
To him.
His whole rant is 1, fuck Jesse Jackson, and 2, OJ did it.
OJ did do it.
Yeah.
We don't admit that to other people. That's just something that people know.
I gotta believe he was on the bus back then. He's on the bus now.
He's on the bus now.
Right.
Oh my god.
But I think that's what we like about the movie. Like, there's some things that we can't admit. Like, yo, when he's like a point for me when he said, "Look, I ain't gonna say this in front of white folks." In the black community, there are some we not gonna discuss
Yeah.
Unless we amongst ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with the fucking internet,
OJ, look, OJ,
the show.
MLK being a hoe. Them shits be on.
That's actually overblown too, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
that ain't, he but yeah, Cam, do you wanna debunk that one, Miss Teacher?
I think it is something that honestly is just indicative of a large problem within the Black community, which is niggas don't know their history as a whole, right? And I think that sometimes that is by design, and sometimes that is just based on ignorance, right? This is an old man in the scene who literally lived through it, and for him to not know accurately what took place, and to be able to speak on part of it but not the whole of it, just shows his ignorance. Like, to be able to say that, she was a part of NAACP and talk about orgs that she was in, but then also in the same breath say that she didn't do shit, just shows how little he actually knows. It's like, shit that niggas told you, but you never actually paid attention to it, because it's well known that Rosa Parks was very active in organizations far before this was, and that this was an organized event that took place specifically as a result of the very Black folks that were getting their asses arrested and being unjustly treated on buses continuously. And so to try to dismiss the work that she did, the work that they did as a community and as a collective, it's just really ignorant. And one thing that I will say that makes me happy about this is that so often it's kind of the opposite when we think of some of these conversations, that we are learning from our elders, that they're the ones telling us all the right things. But in this scene specifically, it is the younger generation that was actually telling him he was wrong. And there were a couple niggas who didn't really have a stake in the ground, but people, to see that type of calling him out of like, nah, you're wrong, like to say that is disrespectful, especially to an elder, for me was just something that was just really nice to see, despite the fact that like he was going off on a crazy ass rant.
Yeah. Also in barbershops, there's these conversations, arguments, and debates that never get resolved, and usually ever. And there's usually like, you can say the crazy, most off the wall stuff, and it's usually the person who's the loudest and most convincing, I can say, that wins the argument, but doesn't really win because it's not really resolved. They just move on to the next topic. But it's kind of how barbershop conversations happen.
Yeah, niggas just be blowing off steam.
Yeah, just be blowing off steam.
I mean, also, like, he's half correct, well, maybe not half, but he's partially correct in the sense that there was Claudette Colvin, Baird Rustin, there were other people who were arrested, prior to Rosa Parks. But it's contradictory because on one side you're like, there was other people that did it, but then you're like lifting them up, but then you're like, well, she ain't doing nothing but sit her ass down. Like, it's just a weird contradiction. But it's like there were other people. Claudette Colvin is one that gets brought up, and then that becomes a debate. Like the 2010s, it feels like a lot of people started picking that debate up, like because she was young, she was dark skinned, she had a kid a little bit after she got arrested, and then there was a sense of they didn't want to protect her, or the NAACP didn't stand up for her, and that becomes like this folklore that then turns into stuff like what you just heard. You know what I mean? Like, and people do this with all kinds of facts. Like, they'll take a little bit of like a nugget of information, like Cam was saying, and then it turns into this kind of just, really disintegrated version of what went down. Right. And there's really nothing to learn from it, because it's like, well, she ain't do nothing but sit her ass down, nigga. But it was other people that did it, and so it just becomes like this like petty war, and it doesn't have a real sense of. It's not really about history and like what people were up against and the choices they had to make and how those were limited, and so the critique isn't really based on that. It's just like, well, I'm gonna tell you, because there's something weird about, like, I remember I was listening to these people who did a study actually, and it was with black men. And they were saying a lot of black men reach for the black men in this was like a focus group actually, and I can't remember who conducted it. And they were like, a lot of black men, after they talked to them, they're like, the reason we the men admitted themselves. The reason a lot of us will pull these kind of conspiracy theory type arguments or draw from some random source, because we sometimes just feel like we don't really know what the hell people are talking about when it's just on the subject itself. so we say something like hyperbolic or over the top to make us feel good and to make us seem like we know what we're talking about. And I think that's what drives a lot of conspiracy theory type language or type arguments is when folks just start like picking at little pieces of stuff that's halfway true and just throwing it out there because it makes them feel like they're an authority on a subject that often, they're not seen as.
That's a real point because
Yeah.
like I feel we've all been in barbershops and we had that conversation. And a lot of times we hear that conversation and you can damn near pick out the next nigga that's ready to talk and be like, I got something to say on this. I got something to say. Oh, this finna fuck him up. This finna fuck him up when I tell him this. And he be like, oh shit, what? And that nigga ain't talking about shit really. But he can the way he projects himself and says it, it almost makes you think like, okay, he might know what he's talking about. But anybody that really knows, this is where in the movie I wish the smart nigga would have chimed in and said some shit to kind of clear everything up.
But the thing is, in real life,
because of his character, that shit.
In real life, this is why I think this movie has a lot of things wrong. If that person is there, they would have said something. Usually, because I've been in those cases, like if they would have said something, not just in a barbershop, but just in general, they would have said something, or they would have just completely been out of the conversation. Because me and Ryan have been both of those people. Either you don't say anything, because you just don't want to be part of it. You're like, and you also sometimes don't want to come off as some uppity person or whatever, or you just be like, nah, Unc, like that's not how it.
Like, I've been in what's his name, James or whatever was his name,
Jimmy James.
Yeah, he doesn't do it, but
his character was to interject in these niggas and put the knowledge into him. Like, oh well, this is what really. But he was nowhere to be found.
But he does. But his character did it about useless things. Like it was like about whether shrimp was shell or whatever. Like it was never any.
That's what I'm getting at. Like, when that's why I say his character, he was supposed to, that smart nigga in the barbershop. I feel like all three of us has been that smart nigga in the barbershop where we interject and we tell them, hey, look, no, this is actually how it really goes. This nigga didn't say shit. Yeah. But this nigga
and I think that's the thing. That's the thing, and I think that's a good point because that's the thing. It's like it. As much as yes, there are like a lot of backwards barbershop conversations where nothing gets resolved, like Ryan said. If we're gonna lean, this is one of my issues with the movie. Like they want to have it both ways, and this is when I criticize it. They're like, oh, well, it's not really. You can't expect. No, if you want to say this is an accurate representation or whatever that means, even though they threw like 20 different types of barbershops into one. But if you want to say that this is an accurate representation, then you have to respect the fact that there actually are people in the room who have like a real good politic. It's not always just ignorant, like half-hearted opinions. You know what I'm saying? But like for the sake of comedy and just because that's how we like to see it, it's the barbershop niggas just be saying crazy shit. But if the barbershop is which I don't even agree with, but if they're saying it's the country club for black men, then it would presume that there has to be somebody in there that knows what they're talking about as well. That would just be logical. Unless we think everybody that goes to barbershop is an idiot.
No, there's definitely some intelligent people in the barbershops. I won't even go get into it, but go ahead.
I think also it's just a nod to old heads who don't know better and are not trying to do better, right? Like so often throughout the movie, folks are trying to tell him what it is, and he is just like, nah, you wasn't even there. Like, nigga, neither were you. So please stop. And I think that's also something that we've talked about in previous episodes of, the fact that it is often heralded that like so many Black people were a part of the civil rights movement when in fact it was a very small percentage, like less than 20% of niggas was really about that life. Even now, they're not about it. And granted, that's not to say that like if your parents and your grandparents wasn't involved in the work, that's like they're trash for that, because
There were real
everybody-
consequences. Yeah.
There were like even worse consequences
Yeah.
than any of us could imagine right now. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think very many of us would be okay with being hoes. Like, Black and I talked about this before a while back of like, people think protests are all fun and games until you're actually being gassed. Like, that shit is not fun. It burns.
Yeah,
and
you
for
got
for some folks, you're just like, okay, it is what it is. I knew the risk when I did this, and I'm willing to still put in that work. And for others, they're like, yeah, no, heard your story, will never do that. And I think that also leads to what we hear now. People will say that they knew somebody or that they were there or this, that, and the third, when in reality, all you just heard from hearsay, from cousins, from aunts, from the regular media, just like everybody else. And it makes you feel good to talk about it as if you know more than you do, versus actually humbling yourself, paying homage to those who actually did the work and being like, I wasn't there, but like what they did was real, and the work that I do in my regular community on this scale is good enough for me. And sometimes it has to be that way, but like for somebody like him who just so badly wanted to be right and wanted to be like this, wise old man. And it's not that he was completely stupid in the whole film and that he didn't drop gems, because there were plenty of times in the movies that he dropped a little gem here and there. But that also is just problematic, to just always act like you know more than you do.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I was saying, I think this goes beyond a barbershop. I think this actually happens in many other places with Black men, actually more often than maybe even in barbershops. I mean, Terrell, when we were in college, remember MOC, it was called Men of Color, and it was this group that, only Black men came to. I don't know why we called it color, because it was just black color, but it was but it was like only Black men came to, and we had good discussions. We had good discussions, but it was like there's a sense of sometimes, I think, like I was saying earlier, like we're really just not that informed on stuff. No. And instead of just being honest about it, there's this posturing, unless you set the tone for the room, for people to try to act like they know more. And I think what we did well, I'm not trying to like go back to those days, but I think we set a tone where like you could come and actually learn, even though you did have those people who would show up and they'd have to learn, like, we don't do that here. You don't get to just come in here and just stick your chest out and say bullshit. You'll get checked, because we don't do that. You know what I mean? But I think there is something about like when your intelligence is always degraded, though. I think that is why sometimes these like over the top arguments become appealing, because you can get some love for that. You actually do receive some social acceptance, even if you're completely wrong, like factually speaking. You do receive some social acceptance by saying the kind of more over the top thing versus just being like, it was, Rosa Parks was part of a strategy. Like, there's nothing really fun about that. Just be like, she's part of a strategy, and they didn't support these other people. She's part of a strategy, and that was what helped set the Montgomery bus boycott in motion, blah, blah, blah. Then Martin Luther King came, da-da-da-da. That's boring to people. But if you're like, she ain't do nothing but sit her ass down, like, it gets you attention. You know what I'm saying? So just like, I think there's a social dynamic, and sometimes people don't analyze with that. And we will see that with other scenes where, like, the barbershop, if it is what people say it is, even though often nobody's talking, but the barbershop, if people are doing all of that, is like this thing where folks are allowed to just say what's on their minds and they can get credit. It's more comparable to like people at a bar that are kind of drunk, only they're not often. Well, some of them are. But when you're drunk and you're telling stories, it's more like that than it is like this knowledge hub or something.
Yeah, it's like a
talk.
Yeah,
say what?
I think that's demeaning just a bit.
What?
That most barbershop talk is more so like drunk nigga talk than anything else.
Talk.
It is.
It's like a social club, really. You talk.
I disagree with you on
I
that.
have been present in the barbershop multiple times, especially, and I've been in co-ed barbershops and in the beauty shop my whole life, and that is not true. It is not always just drunk niggas.
No, I'm not saying. I'm not saying it's always. Let me clarify that before y'all. I'm not saying it's always a bunch of drunk ass niggas. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying when it gets to that kind of conversation, when it's niggas just trying to top each other. That does very much mirror when it's just people drunk. That part of it, not every.
I mean, a pissing contest is a pissing contest.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like when it gets to that point, yeah. Now, if it's just generally, like I said, most of the time, despite what people think, nobody's talking in barbershops. But we'll get to that later.
But no, Cam, I think I understand. I understand what he's saying because I've been in both aspects, like both situations or both environments where I don't know what it is. Like when I was working the door job, doing security at the bar, I don't know what it is about people just thinking I'm open to conversation. I try to look like I don't really want to talk to you, but everybody's just open to conversation with me, so I can't really fight that. But it's that same energy where like even in the barbershop where people are like they're talking to you, you're engaged and everything, and you know this is full of shit. You know there's nothing behind this. There's no facts or anything behind this. Same way when somebody is drunk talking to a doorman about whatever's going on, politics, whatever. There's no facts or anything behind this, but they're so passionate behind it. They're talking and they're loud and they're
You look like my cousin Ricky. Do you know Ricky? By the way, let me have this conversation.
There's nothing behind it supported by any information, any facts.
But
I think that happens everywhere. I think folks are just more comfortable in the barbershop because it is a place, especially in the black barbershop, black beauty shop, it is a place that
you can talk bullshit and be sober.
It's like, I think before the space became cool,
you can get your rocks off.
Was the safe space.
You can get your rocks off. You can say whatever's on your mind. You get to let off some frustration.
I don't think. Here's another thing. I don't think the beauty shop and the barbershop are the same thing. I think the beauty shop. No. I think the beauty shop is actually way. I don't think it's the same. I'm not saying there are similarities, but I don't think it's the same. I think the one just off of the fact that you're just there longer, right? At a beauty shop, like you're just there longer, like based on what you're getting done. Like you're not getting a 20-minute haircut more than often. You know, it's like you're there for hours. So there's just that. So it's like,
first of all, if my haircut is less than 30 minutes, I got an issue.
But in 2002, particularly in 2002, and growing up, haircuts was like, you know, that whole book an hour, 45 minutes thing wasn't a thing back then. Now it is. But
you was just sitting all day to sit all day and kiki and talk shit.
But I'm saying the beauty, I think
nowadays, if my haircut is less than 30 minutes and my haircuts are like $40-$50, hey yo.
Cause my mother used to work for someone who owns a beauty shop. So I spent a lot of time at the beauty shop as a kid, and it's not the same thing. I just don't think it's a lot different to me than the barbershop, because people were there longer. The conversations weren't as centralized. Like people were having conversations in different parts of the shop. Like it was just like people seemed to be talking about way more than in barbershops. So people were much more quiet, you know. So I don't really think of it.
I think we were quiet at the beauty shop. I'll give you a lot of those other things though, because I do think that in general, your relationship with like just you and your beautician is very intimate, and so in that capacity, like you're telling your soul. But there are plenty of times, I mean, usually around the topics of finance, men, kids, that it becomes a shop talk, because now everybody's having these conversations. And I mean, and politics is also something that gets talked about in the beauty shop as well. And I think those often become larger conversations. I think not as much anymore now, because everybody want to do hair at home, or they want to like book a little small booth somewhere, and it's not as community centered as it used to be.
And that's true on both sides. Yeah.
They're in their phone, like
like whatever the barbershops or beauty shops were, whether we agree on what they used to be, they're definitely not that now. So that's totally changed. Any other comments on this before we get to the next scene?
No.
Still fuck Jesse Jackson.
Yes, I don't even have any thing to say about that other than sure. But all right, so
I will say comedically, that scene did his job. Shit was
His
funny.
job.
That was probably one of the better scenes of the movie. I think after that it starts. There's really it's a far drop off to the next good scene.
That scene is what I like in those type of movies where it's funny, not too preachy, but they get a point across.
That was the scene. That was one of the few scenes where I felt like that I've seen that. Some of the other stuff fell over the top to me, or just never happens. But
they didn't force that scene as much.
But and then the fact that like there were just people like scattered around.
Yeah.
Like there was a mailman in that scene. You know, it was just like random people like, and the dude was like, "Man, I love this place, man." Like you know. Mm-hmm. But the way he did that little shucking job before he said "fuck Jesse Jackson," like that was close. Like man, that. Fuck Jesse Jackson.
I was gonna make a comparison. You remember the Boondocks episode where Granddad was talking about marching, but he really wasn't there.
I was thinking that the whole time Cameron was talking.
Yes. I really want to speak on that because he's definitely Eddie's. If anybody doesn't know, Cedric Entertainer's character is Eddie, but Eddie's whole character just kind of represents that civil rights, that old school guy who takes credit for anything done in the civil rights generation, even though he wasn't there.
Granddad.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't do a goddamn thing.
Granddad from the Boondocks. That is Eddie.
But takes on all the credit for everything for what Kim and Black said. A small percentage of Black people during that time did take all that credit, and I guarantee you, by the time we get old, whatever progress is made, there's gonna be people in our generation gonna be like, yeah, we did that. We was right there during the protests. Like, nah, no, you weren't, nigga. Shut the fuck up.
I promise you, I'm not gonna lie about it. I'm gonna tell you straight up. When it was
there.
No, I was at the crib, bro. I was at the crib. I ain't gonna lie. I was chilling. I was there. I was there in spirit for some stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
yeah. I did not.
Even outside of just the topic of this movie, I think that's something that not enough people are okay with. Like, everyone has a place in the movement, and if you know that like you're not a soldier, maybe your place is just donating money. Maybe your place is donating time. Maybe you just show up to the meetings and you're there bringing supplies, printing the newspapers, helping the kids, like
giving water to the protesters, providing food, transportation.
I think the issue is those roles like Cam. Trust me, I'm right there with you. If it's something where I'm a front line type of nigga sometimes, but in other situations, I'm like, yo, can I donate to this? Can I just send my money? And those roles aren't glorified as much.
No, and then sometimes it's just even if even if you're in an organization, like sometimes the work that needs to be done is just not that stuff. Like me and Terrell were on a campaign, to help free political prisoners here in Indiana, and like the Pendleton 2, and Terrell we just asked him to DJ for an event. Mm-hmm. But it's an essential part of the event.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And he's doing it for free as well, right? So there's also that. So it's like sometimes you just need that stuff. Maybe you're not the one that
there's no glory behind it. I'm not gonna go to my kids and be like, oh, when we were trying to free the Pendleton 2, I was on the front lines picketing and doing it. No, bro, I was DJing. Like,
it's like most days there is no picketing. That's what people don't understand. Most days on any issue, it's no picketing. There's no protest. There's no standing in front of the police and doing crump dances or whatever. There's there's none of
yoga on the protest. But that's where the real work happens. The real work happens before, because there's always work that needs to be done before an issue even arises, because we still have other issues from the past to still work through. And the work happens after we're done at a protest, after a rally, after the case has made it public. And niggas are doing their appeals. Just because it's not on TV anymore doesn't mean that there's not work to be done and that there's not room for everyone.
So it's like a mosaic, right? A mosaic piece of art, mosaic artwork, or a painting made of small pieces, but all these small pieces make up the overall picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What way to make it so poetic, Ryan?
Yeah, we'll close on that. or close this that scene on.
Back to the foolishness.
So the next one, we're not in order of the movie, but I just wanted to get to this one because I think we all want to crush this one. So there was a scene, where they talked about reparations, and you know, and somebody went on the Cosby rant. So, you know, we gonna
Ricky,
yeah,
aka light skin Terrell.
And you know what? I like his character, but there are definitely some stuff that's nah.
Yeah.
And I heard on BT, man, we supposed to get some money, man. Word? Yeah, black people supposed to get some money called reparations.
I'm sure everybody in here would love to get a handout.
I mean, if they handing it out, I ain't gonna turn down nothing but my collar.
Well, man. Everybody think, reparations is a good idea, dog. Reparations is stupid. I'm surprised to hear you say that. I figured you'd make a case for how slavery got you all oppressed and how the white man got his foot on your neck. Giving out money wouldn't do nothing. Look at him.
Yeah, that boy ain't doing nothing now but infomercials for bad credit.
Man, slavery, man, it ruined my whole life.
I don't know what y'all say, man, but I ain't taking no reparations because as a black man, I got my pride and my dignity.
You know what? That's bull. You know why? Because you got bills. And your brothers ain't letting no money get by. Next, you're gonna talk about how the Jews got money from the Holocaust.
Jews didn't get money, dog. Holocaust survivors
Look,
got
we
money.
had welfare and affirmative action. Is that not reparations? Is that reparations?
Every time Cedric opens his mouth, I get irritated.
This is cringy.
Bro, the whole jacket is cold though.
It's the strippers in the back.
Well, I think every black person should at least get $100,000.
$100,000, what do you think that's gonna do? That ain't gonna do nothing but make Cadillac #1 dealership in the country.
So everywhere you look, there's opportunity. You don't need
Opportunity to get this job last month. This crack-ass cracker gonna tell me I need a diploma. Now right there, that's racism, that's classism, that's eroticism. Man, come on, I'm talking about isms.
We don't need reparations, all right? We need restraint.
Restraint?
Restraint,
Man,
some discipline.
Whatever.
Don't go out and buy a Range Rover when you living with your mama. And pay your mama some rent. And can we please try and teach our kids something other than the Chronic album? And please, black people, be on time for something other than free before 11 at the club.
Drink time right there.
Oh, this nigga was late the whole movie.
Surprisingly well-articulated argument.
You mocking me?
I think teaching your kids to get in the club before 11 is smart.
You know what, schoolboy, for your information? A scallop is a shellfish.
No, I'm afraid it isn't.
No, I'm afraid it is. Because it's a mollusk. Before it comes to your dinner plate, it got 2 shells wrapped around it just like a clam.
Yay, high school biology.
All right, that scene is not a real.
There's a lot to unpack in that.
Yeah,
scene.
that I don't even know. We can damn near go step by step. I mean, because I don't even.
I feel the most important part of the scene is how we get to learn what a mollusk is.
Oh, I never knew. I never knew.
Woo!
All right, first, since it's like, okay, I mean, I'll pitch this around, but like, nothing about that scene was actually believable. Like, even if a version of that conversation, like, none of that was like over the top. Like, the one we just watched, I was like, okay, I could see that happening, whether I agree. This was just like, they were just making fun of black folks in that scene. Like, it was like, they weren't even really trying to like accurately depict how that conversation would have went, regardless of what side of the debate you fall on. It was just like it was like over the top cooning, and it really wasn't funny. You know, it was just like, you know, like all of this stuff. It was worse than Cosby, honestly. Like some of the stuff they were saying, like, you know.
I don't think it was meant to be funny though.
Like some of it was like that's racism, that's classism, that's racism. You know, like some of that was like. But I'm just saying it wasn't well told in a sense of. I've heard ignorant conversations. I'm from Indiana. I've heard a lot of ignorant conversation, and I've never heard anything that like done like that.
Yeah.
So I'll let y'all respond like on the argument. I have a lot that I could say, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. So
First of all, teaching your kids to get into the club before 11 is smart. Don't ever pay $50 for a fucking cover. Get there early. Spend that money on liquor. What are you talking about, stupid?
And the Chronic album, that is an album of the generation. Like, oh my god, that is a
fucking hater.
Don't ever come for the Chronic album.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, just
I mean, it's really just a lot of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, hey, you know,
no,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
Black is gonna make this point later on, but like a lot of Black capitalist business, like, yeah, you gotta take responsibility, Black man, pull your pants up. A lot of respectability politics in that.
But,
I mean,
no, but Ryan, with that, like, I get where he's coming from because of his position in the movie. He's like the jailbird.
The jailbird.
So like, even granted, I'll tell anybody, never been to jail, never been to prison, none of that shit. Don't plan on going. Not trying to.
I know where you're going with this.
But I see where that mind state comes from because you got all these other niggas in prison telling you, oh, you didn't have to sell drugs, you didn't have to do this, you could have pulled yourself up by your bootstraps and did this.
Yeah,
I see where he's
but
going.
they're saying
There's
that
a lot of prison niggas who do be on that. Like, shout out to my son.
And I like
talk about it.
Damn, bro, he preachy as hell with that shit.
Say what, Cam?
But I think the jailbird is actually what makes his statements even more problematic, right?
Exactly.
And we were talking about this how we talked about how fucking much we hate Lean On Me. Because he was like, and if y'all go to jail, don't blame the white man. Actually, it's the white man's fault that like 90% of that beginning of the movie is the way it is. It's why the school is dilapidated. It's why so many of those kids were in the fucking streets having to hustle. It's why they didn't have no fucking food, no water, because systemically the system has been set up for them to fail. He wouldn't have went to jail if he had access to regular necessities. Like if his basic needs had been met, he wouldn't have had to resort to breaking laws that are stupid to begin with, because crime is bullshit. That would have got him put in prison. And I think that's false, because most niggas in prison that I know, my own father included, talk about how so many of those niggas in there are brilliant and should have never been in there, but had no way to actually be a productive member of society and had to go to what they knew in order to provide for themselves and their families. And yeah, some niggas be doing stupid shit, but that doesn't mean shit, because white people do that all the time and they don't get locked up the way that we do. And so for him to just
some stupid jailbirds out there, though.
I
get what you're saying.
Hard. Like,
yeah, but I mean, I'm not gonna pick on people in jail. I mean, there's people who come out who, but I don't think the dominant ideology is, pull up your. I know people. I mean, we're dealing with people in prison right now. I don't really find that the dominant ideology in prison is everybody should pull up their bootstraps. I don't. There's so many splinters of different thinking in prison. Like you can't really you couldn't even begin to say there's like a dominant way that everybody's talking. Like I don't think. I mean, you got the Nation of Islam, you got the New Africans, you got the Hebrew Israelites, you got a lot of different factions in prison. You got Bloods, you got all kinds of stuff. So I don't think you can really make a general argument that that's what happens. And but I think that
I agree with you on that part. But a lot. No, I agree with you. Trust me, I do. But a lot of those speeches that niggas get in prison, even from all those groups that you mentioned, are centered towards self. And they're like, oh, you could have did this yourself. You could have. Why couldn't you? They place that guilt back on you. And
I mean, I feel like that's something that happens more from the outside. Like, I mean,
I would say both sides. Both sides.
I would say more from the outside. I'm not saying it doesn't happen inside, but I'm saying more from the outside. People who've never been in a position, because even niggas who will say y'all did something wrong are saying like we deserve another chance. Most of them say that. Versus people on the outside often don't even think that they deserve another chance. I think that's a flawed framework as well. But I'm saying at least they're saying we deserve some kind of redemption. And most prisoners, regardless of what they believe in, will say this is not a place of redemption. You know, like
that's
you know what I'm
true.
saying. So it's like on the outside is people who don't see these folks as full human beings and think they deserve to have the books thrown at them. They should be locked, you know, throw them under the jail and all that. Like that's how a lot of us feel. We see ourselves above them. So I wouldn't say that's a dominant ideology within prisons. Of course, that exists. I'm not saying that everybody in prison is a revolutionary. Of course not. If that was the case,
what I would ask you then, do you think that's what like failed him as a character? I don't know if I'm phrasing the question right. Like,
I don't know,
because from what you're saying, and I agree with it 100%. That makes his character kind of like.
Yeah, I don't think that's what I'm saying. I don't think it matches. That sounds like something that the smart nigga would have said. You know, that doesn't sound like that sounds like something that someone who's ever been in prison would have said. That sounds like somebody, you know, who's made it would have said. That doesn't even the nature of that argument. There's plenty of black people who make that argument. We don't have to agree with them or not, but they're making that from a very specific place that it doesn't really make sense for his character to talk like that, because that's usually an experience of like, you know, I've made it, y'all haven't kind of vibe. So I took responsibility, whatever, for somebody to come out of prison when literally Calvin gave you a job when you couldn't get one, and that's your response. Again, I know 'cause my brother sometimes who's been in prison, he don't go that far, but he'll say stuff that I'm like, bro, you literally been in locked up. Why are you talking like that? So I'm not saying it's not possible, but I don't think that's what I was saying earlier. I don't think it's really an accurate depiction. Like that's the guy y'all got to say it. But the writing was bad, so they're trying to like sort out different things at the same time. So they're trying to like sort out that division between him and that beef between him and the smart nigga, while having him say something that really is contrary to how a character would talk. And then just the argument itself, like I get tired of these arguments where you pick like one black person who's ignorant and now they become the representative of the whole group, and now we're all lazy. Like everybody got a lazy sibling, everybody got a lazy cousin, everybody got somebody in their family that don't really pull their in or whatever, and then that becomes a depiction of everybody on welfare, or that becomes a depiction of every black person, and then it's like, well, we don't deserve reparations because niggas is lazy and y'all need to raise your kids, and it's like, huh? Based on what? Like, I always ask people, like, what are you basing this off of? Where are you getting your information from? You walk around this community and you think all these niggas are just lazy, do good, nothings? Like, where are you basing this off of? You know,
and just the smart nigga contradict himself.
Yeah, he's like, y'all ain't gonna turn down reparations because y'all got bills to pay. Of course, you know. But then he's like,
right before that, he's agreeing. Like right before that, he's agreeing with old boy. Like I'm gonna call him Jailbird from now on. He's agreeing with Jailbird. Like we don't need reparations, we need moderation, we need this and that. I'm like, bro, you just agreed with him. Now you talking about, oh, but you got bills to pay. You got this one.
But that might actually be accurate because that's the fake smart nigga is somebody who doesn't hold any real like belief, so he just jumps back and forth. You know, like that.
Yeah, but and like in the movie they like
he shoots down whatever.
Yeah, whatever makes him sound smart, literally.
There you go. That's what I was looking for.
Like whatever, like that actually might be accurate. But I'm just saying, black people need more than just reparations. That's a start. So it's like, you know, two, nothing black people do today, regardless of how lazy we are or aren't, has anything to do with whether we deserve reparations. Like those things actually shouldn't even be in the same argument. That has nothing to do with it, because if you've stolen from people, even if the people you stole from are the most lazy, idiotic folks, even if we accept that premise, you still stole from them. So they still deserve their money back. They still deserve everything you stole from them. So when people talk about, well, we gonna do this, even if black people did take whatever we got in reparations and went and spent it on Jordans or whatever, even if that happened, but we still deserve the money. So that argument, that's what I'm saying, that doesn't make any sense on its face. That has nothing. Those things actually have nothing to do with each other, because you're saying these people have to reach a moral level to get what they deserve. No, it doesn't. It don't work like that. Like so, it said like you can't have it both ways. So those things are not connected.
Not everybody needs to go take the reparations and invest in Bitcoin. Like no,
and lose money.
Right.
I think if you wanted to buy a new caddy, buy a new caddy. If
I
you
mean,
gonna
it's your
pay off
money,
your
right? You
granny
can do what you want to
pay
do
off
with
your
your money.
granny's house, regardless of what you do with it.
Mhm.
Like you should not be bound by any rules to it because you deserve it off rip. Because our niggas should have never been like enslaved. Our ancestors should have never, ever been enslaved.
Yeah.
And so, regardless of what comes after that, the premise is this shouldn't have happened, and something needs to take place in order to make even the slightest amends for it. Because even cutting a check for everybody will never will never give us what we lost.
Exactly.
And
I think to go off of, and just to really, I think combine Black's earlier point and then also, well, Black's point and then Terrell's earlier point, there is a group of prisoners that come up with books and everything that do push some kind of like pull your stuff up by your bootstraps. But to your point, Black, there is a longer rich history of, prisoners protesting, rioting, who are actually well aware of what the system does.
Not just well aware, more aware than any of us.
And I think that they don't get projected on a platform or on a pedestal as much as there are a group of, like, I guess, lazy prisoner intellectuals, like ex-gang members or people who are still in the gang, or to be like, try to play both sides of the fence.
Yeah, you're gonna have
be like, yeah, go ahead.
You're gonna have reactionary folks. You're gonna have people that spill bullshit all the time. Like they're in prison. Like everybody's not gonna come out of that situation intelligent. You're in prison. Like so a lot of things can go wrong. But I'm just saying it's never George Jackson type people who are depicted in this. You know what I mean? It's somebody who really wasn't even a bad character up to that point, and in this moment you're making some weird reparations argument like you are a businessman or something. And then also I just want to say lastly, on the reparations point, this movie makes another mistake when they make it seem like reparations has only been talked about in the form of checks. Like this has been debunked heavily.
I was just about to get into that.
Reparations can be a million different things. Welfare has nothing to do with reparations. So I don't know why that was.
That was my point right there. Like when I think it was Eddie, he says, "Y'all got welfare checks and what else did he say?"
Affirmative action.
He said, "Y'all got affirmative action and welfare checks."
Helps white people the most.
And I was like, when he said that, I was like Cam said, "Yo, that helps white people the most." Plus, what Jay-Z
there's mad data to prove that.
Hold on, what Jay-Z say? Even if we did accept welfare checks and affirmative action and whatever else they throw in that mix, even if we did accept that as reparations, hey yo, bro, that's not what you owe me.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like that has not.
Would like my 40 acres and a mule. I'm just saying.
Black. What it?
But Terrell might want a caddy and a really nice rifle, and give us both what we want at this point.
And it's like it.
Like, bro, you owe me 10. You not paying me 9.
That's why I said reparations. Reparations is a start. Because again, there's another point to be made beyond like if let's say you gave everybody checks, which is just one of many types. There's infrastructure investments. There's giving black people ownership over certain companies, just like nationalizing it and giving it to us. There's all kinds of. There's giving us land, like Cam's talked about, all kinds of different forms of reparations. So it's not just giving everybody a check that has a number on it. But even if you did do that, another argument, like when he's say what.
I was like, universal health care.
Yeah. So it's like, when you give, when he's like, well, they'll just give Cadillac, basically, I don't know what the exact line was, but they'll get a burst.
Cadillac, the #1 dealership in the world.
Right.
Right.
Well, it's like, that's another question of like the means of production. So it's to say like, because that's why reparations isn't, I would say it doesn't go far enough, because if you did just give black people a check, if you are talking about in that form, since we don't own the means of production, all that means is the actual things that are needed to make society go, the actual production that creates stuff, that's privately owned by a few white people. So it's like those actual tools that are needed, because we don't own those things, even if we spend our money, it goes right back into their hands because everything has to go through them. So if we want to get, if we don't own sugar, we don't own cotton, you know, we don't own the actual things that put things on shelves. We don't own those materials, so we would just have to buy it from them. So they should have to give that up too. But since they wouldn't, since you don't own a car dealership, you're gonna go to a car dealership, right? And you're gonna spend it at Cadillac or whatever niggas would buy. So like that's a deeper discussion of just like the fact that the means of production has been appropriated by a very small capitalist class, right? Like, but that doesn't get brought up. Now again, I don't expect them to go that deep. Even if this was a better scene, I don't expect that. But I'm just saying, for the sake of conversation, like these are things that could be put into it, and they took it and just went. I'm like, I don't know who wrote this shit. Like, you could make a argument about like black conservatism or whatever, and at least depict it a little better than that. like black conservatives have. I don't even like them, but they have a better argument than that. You know? So,
do they? Do they really?
Yeah.
Better than that, yeah.
Yeah,
I was kidding.
they do. And I don't agree with them, but I'm just saying, like, they have a better argument than that. Because they'll at least be like, you know, we need to have our own business or something. These niggas didn't even say that. They were just like, don't go to the club and listen to a Chronic album. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
That was a bad album, at least. Like,
say what?
I said that's just some hater shit. The Chronic is classic.
Yeah, as a classic, I don't see why. I think I think one of y'all said it. That's a cultural artifact. So I don't understand. You know, it's better than the movie. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Like it's better than the movie, but whatever. All right, last.
Before 11 that's financial literacy right there. Yeah, that's budgeting, my nigga.
Straight up. That's what I'm saying. Like,
so like these things are, like in the moment when we're watching these films, for so many people it's like, oh, ha ha ha, that's just a good laugh. But in reality, it's like, what messages are people taking away? Like, how many people watched that and really was sitting here having conversations about whether or not niggas actually deserve reparations, or if, you know, these things should that why are we not critiquing these things to begin with? Like, why should something that has so many disparaging remarks against us was even praised to the point where it got not one but two more movies to go with it?
and Dave Chappelle did a skit on that whole reparation check thing, you know. And that was a show watched by even more white people. So, yeah, like, you know, that argument, again, these things have the present condition of whatever black people choose to do has nothing to do with what was stolen from them. If I stole from you and then I'm like, well, I don't really, you know, I don't like you. You're a bum or something. So I'm not giving you your money. Like, does that make any sense? You know what I'm saying? So, like
you brought up, even in that Dave Chappelle skit, he mentioned there was a white dude, what was it, in the newscaster scene or whatever of the skit. He was like, it seems like they're just in a rush to put that money right back into our hands, right? Because we don't own the dealerships, we don't own the production factory of Gucci and all that. So where else are we gonna put it?
You know, so that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm like, that's a start.
Exactly.
That's like point one to get me to a negotiating table. That's a start. Alright, so anybody that's gotten this far, you saw the tag on the screen. If you want to listen any further to this conversation, you can go to Patreon. For those who have listened thus far, we appreciate it. This isn't a competition between BPM and Black Myths. So if you feel like you want to give money to BPM, you know, we're part of BPM, obviously, so it doesn't hurt us. But this is content that was made originally for Patreon. We decided to just put it on BPM to show love. So there's about another hour and some change of this conversation. We have a debate about whether the Barbershop is this country club of the black community or whether it's this pillar, and I thoroughly disagree with that description. So it's pretty interesting debate. We talk about the characters in the movie and all of that. Again, this is not our most refined political analysis, and we're not going for that, but I think we still have a pretty in-depth discussion just for shooting this shit. So if you want to listen to that, you know, peep it. It's on Patreon right now, both video and audio. And we'll probably we'll see, probably do these like once a month just to switch it up a little bit. Black myths, black movies. Some will be more intense conversations. Like if we do something on a movie that's literally like supposed to be, you know, based on a true story or a historical analysis of something, then we'll probably go a little more in depth. But you know, black myths, we always gonna do our research, but we still gonna just be straight with y'all. So anyway, thank y'all for listening. You know, you can support the Patreon. Again, you can support it as low as $1. So it's not like you really got to pay much more to watch this. We appreciate it if you give more than that, and if you want to become a member of our Patreon. But we're just trying to do more to get people over on that side. So appreciate it. Peace.
Okay, fresh out the plane in a whole nother state. I'm trying to eat down a whole nother plate. Seem like my homies was stuck in the hood. I just told them be safe in the state.